Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of Halftime Talk. We're delighted to welcome back to the table Alhajji, Managing Partner, Energy Advisors Outlook. Without over egging the pudding, as they say, one of the world's most notable analysts in the global energy market. So welcome, Anas. Welcome back. Thank you so much. Where to start? I mean, we're sitting here at the end of October, deep into obviously 2024, staring at 2025, but we're in a rather sort of, it seems, listless oil market in a sense that yes, we've had, and we still have the drama backdrop of the geopolitics, and anything could happen at any moment. But behind that cloud, there appears to be an oil market searching for a direction. Your thoughts where we are at this point, deep into 2024, looking at 2025, when it comes to just the fundamental supply-demand balance of the market?
Historically, if you look at various forecasts, I'm talking about the last 25 years, you will see that forecasts, let's say, start at the end of the year for the next year, and they diverge greatly. But as we go through the year and more data comes in, they converge. So the differences toward the end of the year becomes really small, and sometimes they match. But since COVID, we have a completely different story. We see that they diverge, but they never converge. And that's very strange. So we are in October, as you said, right now. And the IEA think that global oil demand in 2024 is growing at less than 900,000 barrels a day, while OPEC still think it's going to be at 1.9 million barrels a day, the difference of 1 million barrels. We never had this before. So we have a serious problem. But the problem is really way, way bigger. Because since 2017, data in the oil market has been deteriorating substantially, mostly because of shale and how the EIA calculate shale production and the rest of the supply chain. But COVID came in, made the situation worse. Then we ended up with Russia invading Ukraine and with all that dark fleet, etc. So the data just deteriorated significantly. Then the media got involved because of elections this year. We have two major elections, the elections in India and the elections in the United States. And the level of deterioration in reporting is, let me put it differently, we never seen bad reporting like this ever. This year was the worst. And
when you say reporting, Anas, you're talking about data reporting, not general news reporting, right?
I'll tell you how it is, because we never seen this before. For example, and I'm going to point out Bloomberg in particular, because they have a serious problem. Historically speaking, they report a story and that's it. This year in particular, especially when it comes to India and the Biden administration, you have a story that has nothing to do with anything else. And all of a sudden, they will start talking about the success of the sanctions on Russia and how Biden policies are working perfectly and how the price cap is working perfectly. While the story is not about price cap. It's not about the sanctions. For India, for example, they always push the story that the Indian economy is doing amazing, or the performance of the Indian economy is great. Modi is doing great. He's cooperating with the West. Look, he is blocking those Russian ships because of the sanctions, and all of them were lies. They were not correct. But the original story is correct. There is a story there, but they have a tilt to the story that we never seen before. And then you add to it right now those forecasts and the differences on forecasts. So they piled up above each other and made everything basically miserable in the oil market. And in a sense, anyone can claim right now to be correct, because there is no way to prove them wrong.
It's it's hard to see that OPEC Plus could claim to be correct. I mean, the 2 million or so barrel a day demand increase I mean, you could maybe sort of let it slide in the second quarter, but now we're into the fourth quarter. I mean, it looks a little bit ridiculous.
Well, let's make a distinction here. It's very important to distinguish between OPEC Plus and its actions and the OPEC monthly report. These are completely two different things.
Of course, yes,
And,
yes, yes,
and
yes.
if you look at the actions of OPEC Plus and what the Saudis are doing, it's exactly the opposite of what the OPEC report is saying. So in a sense, we have to kind of distinguish between those two. In fact, you can add to it that if you look at the CEO of Aramco said this in an interview. He said they predicted oil demand to grow by 1.5 million barrels a day, while OPEC was saying 2.25. So it is very clear that the view of the Saudis are different from OPEC. So if there is a problem, it's really with the OPEC monthly report, not with the actions of OPEC Plus. So the whole idea here is.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to add one more layer.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah,
I added various layers where the data is really bad, and all of a sudden we have now a decline in China, and no one knows exactly what's going on in China with various estimates, various things, etc. So above all those layers, we have the problem of China right now, and add to that another layer. People are talking about peak oil demand. So you add all of those together, and the situation becomes very difficult, and to sort through it becomes a difficult task. So we just released a report a couple of days ago on China. And it's funny because after we delved into every single data point out there, and I'm not taking the Chinese information, by the way. So just to be clear, so it's not the Chinese government information. After you delve into all this information, you find the following. After all the adjustments, the IEA think that the Chinese oil demand will grow by 150,000 barrels a day in 2024. OPEC think it's 580. And there are people who are saying, no, we have an actual decline up to 300,000 barrels a day in Chinese oil demand. Because of all those layers of bad data that I mentioned, I can literally, if I have a board right now, or I have a slide, I would have shown you, I can support each one of them.
I suppose on any level, they're still low, right? Even the optimistic OPEC one.
So the issue here is because of bad data, the decline of 300 has support, the IEA 150 has support, and OPEC 580 has support. But if you
re-engineer it, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. But the main issue here is this, and that's what I think the bottom line answer to your question. The bottom line answer is this: whatever that demand is, whether minus 300 or 150 or demand growth, 150 or 580, it is way, way lower than original estimate that we had before. The IEA thought it will be 800. Now it's saying it hit 150. The OPEC said it's 710. Now 580. Those who were predicting minus 300, they were talking about 600 and 700. So oil prices declined because the market and market participants were very optimistic at the beginning of the year. And that optimism has no legs. It was very clear to us from the beginning that it had no legs. And now we are paying the price for it because people, producers, and others basically acted based on those forecasts, only to find out that we have a surplus right now.
Well, if we look at the demand question and we take all of those Chinese numbers, wherever they land, ultimately there appears to be a softening China, that if you take the big wheel of time, 30 years or whatever you want to talk about, this sort of bumper China growth, demand growth, the idea that we've seen China's economy as a whole, those double-digit growth years of massive construction and infrastructure and cement pouring everywhere all day long, all night long, with it energy consumption. Is it fair to say, what's your own analysis? Is that now over, whether it's peak oil demand or not? It's in the zone of what it was for 30 years is no longer. We're now in a slower growth China, one that is less oil consuming. Your thoughts on just that general narrative, and then
I
where the
apologize
OPEC
because
Plus
I
should
have
go in
allergies in
consuming
my
that
eyes, so
narrative?
I had to wipe them off. But we have a chart, and people can check my Twitter account to see that chart because it's available. We plotted the demand.
Thank you.
For China since 1990, the oil demand. And what we find basically is demand declined twice since 1990. One in 1997 during the financial crisis, and one in 2022 during the COVID lockdown. So both of them were kind of exogenous events that affected China. This time is the only time it is a domestic event, although someone could argue that it is the trade wars that contributed to that. So this is a unique time for China because of this slowdown. It's the result of structural changes within China itself. But what I would like to clarify here is we have those who are arguing that demand declined by 300,000. They are saying that this is the effect of electric vehicles and LNG trucks. Well, we did the analysis, and I'm going to share some numbers with the viewers here. One of the problems we have, again, this is part of the bad reporting by the media, that notice that the media is always reporting electric vehicle sales. Always. But they don't tell you how many actual cars on the road. And for oil demand, what really matters, and for the EV market, what matters is really the number of electric vehicles on the road. So the number of vehicles on the road today,
as compared to what, sitting on the side, like parked in a garage, or
compared to, they tell you, well, right now, percentage of electric vehicle sales in China is 60%. That's what they report.
Right, I get you. Okay.
But that's irrelevant to the oil demand.
Yes.
What matters to the oil demand is the number of electric vehicles on the road.
And how many combustion engines they're displacing.
Correct. So right now in the world, we have about 50 million electric vehicles of all types. It's very easy to calculate how much they replaced in oil demand. And here comes the role of the media and the exaggeration of the media. They replace only 1.23 million barrels a day. That's it. And this happened over a period of 15 years. It did not happen yesterday. 1.25, that's it. Half of that is in China. So 25 million vehicles, electric vehicles in China. So they replaced about 600,000. And that's it. And again, this is over a period of several years. But the decline in demand in China, any way you look at it, relative to the forecast, is higher than the impact of those electric vehicles and LNG trucks. And part of the problem we have with various reports, I'm talking about professional reports on electric vehicles, is that they count every sale as a replacement to electric vehicle, as a replacement to gasoline or diesel vehicle. While in reality, we have two problems. The first one is about 15% of car sales in China. Oh, let me rephrase that. About 15% of electric vehicle sales in China are replacement to older electric vehicles. And therefore, they are overestimating the impact on oil demand, because really they are not replacing any oil demand. That oil demand was replaced years ago. So that's number one. Number two, they are not counting the amount of oil that goes into building of those cars, which is another problem. If you look at the data, you'll find out that China's demand for naphtha and LPG increased substantially in recent years. Why? Because that's what they use in petrochemicals to manufacture literally the materials needed for the body of the electric vehicles. Now someone will say, well, gasoline cars need body too. What is the difference? Well, there is a big difference. The big difference is electric vehicles are very heavy relative to their counterparts. So what manufacturers are doing, they are making composite materials to make the body of the car, electric vehicle, lighter to compensate for the weight of the battery. And therefore, they needed more petrochemicals in those cars to make the body. And that amount of oil is not included. Another point, they designed all those electric vehicles with the torque and the power they have without paying attention that they needed special tires. So we still have the regular tires, which led to higher wear and tear of the tires. On average, for the life of tires on a gasoline car, you need to replace the tires on an electric vehicle like 3, 4, 5 times, depending on how people drive. So we counted the impact on oil demand because tires are made from oil and gas, literally. We calculated that and we found out, and this is of course a rounded number, between 2016 and 22, just the extra tires, not the original tires, this is just the extra tires for electric vehicles worldwide, the demand for oil increased by about 60 million barrels. That's not counted anywhere.
Wow. On the point we had I just wanted to pick up on the point you made earlier about the idea that oil, the use, the sort of detour of the oil strategy, the oil use everywhere in China in particular for mobility, and now for petrochemicals. We had the CEO of Aramco, and obviously it's not the first time they're saying it, but that they have a lot of faith in the demand outlook because they see, in order to future-proof their business, that petrochemicals will replace its purpose for mobility as electric vehicles take over mobility. Your thoughts on that future-proof strategy that a lot of the national oil companies in the Gulf are betting the house on? We saw in the last week an ADNOC buy a big European chemical company for $11-12 billion or euros, I think. So it's big time stuff now. They're betting the house on future-proofing with chemicals displacing mobility for the use of oil. Your thoughts on that strategy?
We have several academic studies right now that show that the manufacturing of solar panels and wind turbines and electric vehicles increases demand for oil products, oil and gas products. And I'm talking about serious academic studies. They all show the same thing. And if you go back probably about 4 years, 5 years, probably 2019 or early 2020, when the Saudis introduced the oil for, it was, I think, oil for material or something like this, the concept where you can make materials out of oil. In a sense, everything that is made out of wood or steel can be made out of oil. Okay. And what was the message? The message was very clear that, okay, you don't want my oil because you are building those electric vehicles and you are adopting electric vehicles. I want to make sure that the body of those electric vehicles are made from my oil. You want to go for solar, that's fine. I want to make sure that those solar panels are made from my oil. You want to go for wind turbines, I want to make sure that the blades are made from my oil. So the problem, and this is one of the main criticisms we have for the long-term outlooks of various groups, including ExxonMobil, the IEA, and OPEC, that they are ignoring the reaction of the producers, which is a big problem. They are always looking at the behavior of consumers and what they want and how they are going to act under climate change. But they never paid attention to the reaction of producers as a result of that.
In
And
what
the reaction
sense?
of producers in
Yep.
various ways. For example, exactly what you said, that the producer's job is to make sure that oil demand will last longer, and therefore they will want to look for alternatives. I'm going to give you something from the oil industry, because what they are doing has nothing to do with Saudi Arabia or the UAE or the Arab countries. This is the nature of the oil business. For the last 120 years, if you study the behavior of the oil majors, they always, always, always try to control the competition. In fact, one of my claim to fame, and one of the things I brag about, in 1997 and 1998, I've done the first study on the impact of hydrogen vehicles on oil demand. That era. And one of the conclusions I concluded was, at that time, we have several independent companies producing green hydrogen. And one of the conclusions was, watch out, the oil industry is going to come in, buy all those companies, and switch the source of hydrogen to natural gas. And that's exactly what happened. The oil companies, I'm talking about the oil majors, the Western oil majors, they literally bought all those companies and they switched the source to blue hydrogen instead of green hydrogen. So this is the nature of the industry, basically, is to control the competition and switch it to its interest. And so we have
And is that volume? I mean, if you take the particularly from the China point of view, but elsewhere as well, that the displacement of the gasoline and the diesel, which is obviously a huge percentage of the use of oil today, and China arriving at, I mean, there's everybody's now sort of saying peak gasoline demand, peak diesel demand, not necessarily peak crude oil, but certainly peak mobility oils. Is the consumption opportunity in petrochemicals sufficient to account for the loss of mobility? Is it enough? Is it big enough? Or is it?
Yes, it is big, but it's very hard to make a conclusion right now, and here's why. Because when you build a factory and you set it up, you are talking about the next 20 years, 30 years, while the factory is only 3 years old. So it's very hard to make a conclusion on what is the impact. So yes, we can kind of make some scenarios, but still, the main conclusion is all the reports that support electric vehicles are exaggerating the impact on oil demand. That's a fact. The only thing we can differ on what is exactly the impact is, but they are exaggerating the impact. There are other issues, basically, we have to pay attention to. We just released another report on South Africa. 80% of electricity in South Africa comes from coal. 80%. And there are power outages all over. And 75%, this is what's one of the striking things, 75% of the population is under 30 or under, 30 years of age or under, 75% of the population.
In South Africa.
And then Europeans are coming to South Africa and tell them, look, let me help you out. You need to transition and you need to adopt energy transition, and I will give you a few $1 million so you can close some coal mines and close some coal-fired plants. We've seen this in Indonesia. We've seen this in Vietnam. We've seen it in South Africa. They took the money and they kept the plants.
And China kept buying the coal. Let's look at supply before we run out of time. And as obviously in the shorter term, OPEC Plus are facing a decision on how to bring back this shut-in supply. We're at around 6 million barrels on OPEC Plus. They were meant to bring it back October 1st. They punted to the December 1st. Given the more short-term outlook, what do you think about the dynamics around OPEC Plus proceeding with that decision to start to increase supply from December 1st?
Let me build on one idea first that we discussed earlier, which is For some reason, the media built the hype around the $100 oil, and they said the Saudis want $100 oil and this and this and this, which
That big
has no
Financial
base.
Times article last
Correct.
month,
This has
basically, yeah.
no, even before that, we have Bloomberg talking about it too. So there are no basis for that. So when prices decline to 75, everyone is talking about the decline in prices. Well, 75 basically is a great price. Still a great price. Having a price of 75, if you can keep it for the next few years, I mean, this is great for everyone. It's not a big deal. I don't know why the media is always comparing it to 190, etc., etc. The other issue related to the Gulf countries, specifically Saudi Arabia. Look, the United States been running budget deficit forever. Other countries been running budget deficit forever. The Saudis at one period, 21 years in a row, they've been running budget deficit. And no problem. So why the media is making a big thing out of it for nothing? So now the whole idea here is $75 is good. If they can maintain that, that's good. We should not underestimate the will of OPEC Plus in getting most of what they wanted. They cannot get everything they wanted, but they have a proven record right now on that they are acting basically, or they walk the talk. Our problem right now, when it comes to OPEC Plus, is two countries, Iraq and Kazakhstan. And there is a fear.
Russia, no?
And Russia, because they already reduced their production and exports. We don't know whether because of the Ukrainian attacks, because of other things, maintenance, lack of investment, etc. But the Russians are cooperating, but we don't know the exact reasons why the production is declining. But we do have serious problem with Iraq in particular. And the reason why, if you look at the numbers, the Iraqi government is reporting only the production of Iraq without Kurdistan. While the secondary sources, the 7 companies that supply OPEC Plus with the information, they count Kurdistan numbers. So you can see the divergence between the two numbers. OPEC Plus agreement is based on secondary sources, not government sources. And therefore, Kurdistan numbers are included. The idea or the news or the statement that's been made by some officials that Kurdistan cut production by 50%, there is no basis for it. There is no single evidence that they cut it by 50%. And the Iraqi government
do you think that
well,
the Iraqi overproduction and the Kazakhstan overproduction is enough of a problem to, let's say, trigger that article in the Financial Times that OPEC Plus could get into a price war, could get into a market share war just because of 2 members, indisciplined members?
Regardless of what the FT says, there is a genuine fear among traders and investors in the market that would happen, regardless of what the FT said. So there is a genuine fear.
And the Saudis never declined, the Saudis never denied the FT usually to do when it was so direct in its citing. Saudi sources said.
I can tell you, the FT report does not rank to the FT standards, period.
Okay.
And it has literally no value.
Okay.
Literally has no value. The issue here is real because the traders are afraid that might happen. But yes, there are many ways around it because the Iraqis can come in and say, look, I already cut 180. Yeah, I know I should have cut like 250, but I cut 180. Let me try next month. That's a workout. That's a way basically to work out things where, yeah, there is some cut, but it's not a perfect cut. That will prevent that price war. So they don't have to act like in a obnoxious way and say, I'm not cutting, etc. No, they are showing that they are cutting, but they are not cutting enough. And the problem, and people should understand this, some of the oil smuggled from Kurdistan, and probably more than half of it, is coming to Iraq. which means that the Kurdistan oil is
By truck.
substituting the Iraqi consumption or substituting the Iraqi oil in consumption and enabling the Iraqi government to export more. So if they are serious, they should stop smuggling so their consumption can go up and their exports can go down. And that's enough to prevent any of those issues. However, there is a conspiracy theory being circulating among traders. The conspiracy theory goes like this. And by the way, there are conspiracy theories that have no legs, and some of them have some legs. So this one has some legs. That Iran in particular, who increased its production and exports substantially in the last 3 years, they increased by about 1 million barrels, that they don't want Trump in office. They want Kamala Harris. And therefore, they see lower prices helping them in that. And they are pressuring the Iraqi government to maintain production until the election. And then the Iraqi government can come in after the election and say, okay, now I'm going to cut. And that will prevent a price war. But the issue here is this theory.
I wanted to just sort of focus in on this decision that OPEC Plus have to make. And they announced it months ago, 6 months ago, in granular detail, that every month I'm going to do 10 barrels, you're going to do 12, you're going to do 13. I mean, it was like so itemized, and then next month you're going to do 13 and I'm going to do 15. I mean, it was on such a granular level that it showed serious intention to proceed with this increase. Of course, they postponed it, as I said. What's your research? What's your belief about December 1st? Should they proceed? Do they proceed? Is it already built in the price that they are going to proceed? What do you think?
First of all, when it comes to this decision to extend it by 2 months, because the surprise came from China. I mean, no one was expecting this massive slowdown in China, and that's where the problem is. The second issue is, I'm talking about it here from a game theory point of view. I'm not talking about anything or any other information. From a game theory point of view, I will go with the unwinding of the cuts on the 1st of December, regardless of the price level, regardless of anything else. And the reason why, because it solves several problems and get rid of some of the headache that they've been having in recent months with the overproduction. At the same time, those who are bearish in the market, those who are bears and who are pulling prices down, just flush them out of the market, let them get what they want, and let the market basically behave after that based on fundamentals rather than someone playing with algos. And if they do that, if China does not buy oil for their SPR and for their inventories, because this is really where the game is going to be, because China already started building inventories, but at a lower price. Let's say if Brent goes from 75 to 69 or 68, we will see more demand from China for inventories. The question is it in the interest of Saudi Arabia and other countries to allow China to build those inventories, because China is going to use it against them later on when prices go up? So from a game theory point of view, probably it's better for them to go with the plan as planned. So in this way, they can get rid of some of the headache of Iraq and Kazakhstan and Russia and the UAE at the same time. And then they can move on. Yes, prices will be a little bit lower, but move on without that headache. Otherwise, they will be carrying that bag for the next few months, probably for the next year. So get rid of it and let the market deal with it. Russia probably will support that simply because Russia wants to see shale oil production declining. So natural gas production can decline, which is the associated gas. So the US will not have enough LNG to supply Europe. So from a game theory point of view, it's better just to go with the plan and do it.
Well, we're going to have to go at the end of this interview now because we could obviously talk all night. You're just a genius and incredible to have the opportunity to pick your brain on these issues twice a year. And Anas Alhajji, Managing Partner, Energy Advisors Outlook, the best of the business. Thank you for your time today on Halftime Talk.
Thank you. Have a great day.